Thanks for tuning in to Know Wine in No Time. I'm your host Dave, and today we're talking about a single varietal, and that's one called Cabernet Sauvignon. But before we do, I want to take a quick poll. Everybody out there, raise your hand if your favorite red grape varietal is Cabernet Sauvignon. Let's see, how are we doing? Wow, that's just about everybody out there. And why is that? Because Cabernet Sauvignon may just be the world's most perfect wine growing grape. So why is that? Vintners and consumers everywhere love Cabernet Sauvignon. From a vintner standpoint, they like it because of the ease of cultivation. Cabernet Sauvignon adapts to a wide variety of different climates. It's late budding, which means that it's resistant to some of those freak frosts that we get late into the spring. It also resists insects, mold, and mildew. It has very thick skins, and this is where we start to steer from the vintner liking it to the consumer liking it. Those thick skins contribute to tannins in the wine. It also has a very high sugar content, which means it could be fermented to leave a little residual sugar behind, or to be fermented to have a quite high alcohol content. It also has very firm acidity, which means that Cabernet Sauvignon can age for decades at a time. And finally, it has an affinity to oak, which means that when it's aged in oak vessels, it takes on a little bit of a vanilla or spicy persona. Cabernet Sauvignon grapes produce a wine that is full-bodied, rich in tannins, but also has balanced acidity, which makes it one of the perfect wines. Now, this particular grape is cultivated all around the world on every single continent. Matter of fact, there are over 850,000 acres under vine with Cabernet Sauvignon. But it takes on a different persona based on how it's cultivated and the heat that surrounds it. So let me explain that for just a second. In cooler weather areas, Cabernet Sauvignon will take on a bit more of a vegetal persona. It'll take on flavors of green pepper and sometimes mint. In moderate climates, it performs the best. It brings out bright red fruits, things like cherries and cassis. The acidity is balanced, and also the sugars allow it to get a significant alcohol content, but not all the way over the top. When we plant it in very warm weather environments, it tends to personify itself in a little bit more dark fruits. So now let's think plums and cherries, and the actual wine itself will tend to be a bit more jammy. So where did this grape come from? It's been rumored that it's an ancient varietal dating back to the Romans. Or it was a wild grape that was first cultivated in Spain. Well, actually, a 1996 study by the University of California at Davis, their enology department, discovered that through DNA testing, Cabernet Sauvignon actually came about by a chance meeting of Cabernet Franc and Sauvignon Blanc. In the late 1600s, in southwest France, just south of Bordeaux, these two grapes crossed and they produced Cabernet Sauvignon. Finally, let's talk about some foods that pair very well with Cabernet Sauvignon. So because this particular wine has significant tannins and a higher level of acidity, we want to seek out heavier foods, foods with more protein, but also foods with fat. One of the classic pairings in the world for Cabernet Sauvignon is a steak. But I always think of something with a little bit of marbled fat. Think prime rib, think ribeye steak, those type of steaks. Filet mignon may be a little bit too lean, but on a pairing, it's what you like. The most important pairing is really the person you share your Cabernet Sauvignon with. So Cabernet Sauvignon, as we mentioned, exists all around the world, and its most famous appellation, the one with the most history, is Bordeaux, France. Bordeaux, France is covered in many different No Wine in No Time videos, not only talking about Bordeaux from a 101 standpoint, but also touring some vineyards in Bordeaux. You should really check those out. So today I wanted to talk about appellations on the west coast of the United States, most specifically Napa Valley. This particular wine that I chose today, just to give you an idea of where it hits in the marketplace, this is a $50 bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon. It comes to us by a vintner by the name of Aros, and it's a Napa Valley Cabernet. Now, Aros pulls these grapes from a couple of different appellations in Napa Valley. So if you see on the label, it says Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon. So let's dive into it and see what we can expect from a warmer weather environment and a California Cabernet Sauvignon. So the first thing that we notice in the glass, the Cabernet comes across very dark purple. I actually cannot see through it, so we would call it opaque. If we swirl to liberate the aromas, what's wafting out of the glass is aromas of candied cherry. So think a Luxardo cherry, if you've ever had some of those. That's exactly what this smells like coming out of the glass. I also get some hints of wood, namely oak, that's kind of coming across as more of a toasty type aroma. Let's pass it past the palate and see what we think. In tasting this Aros Cab, the first thing we notice is the fruits that are at the front side of the palate. It enters in with a bit of a plum type of fruit. Remember, we said the warmer weather environments, the fruits were going to be darker. So this is a very plummy type of wine, almost like a stewed plum or a prune. Then I get on the mid palate a little bit of raisin. I'm getting some spice in there as well. When I say spice, think more like herbes de Provence, like a cooking spice. And on the back side, not only on the entry, but also afterwards, I'm tasting a little bit of toasty oak. It almost feels like caramel on the back side of the palate. This type of wine, a Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon, is just pure indulgence. It's pure opulence. If we look at the alcohol content on this bottle, it's 15.1%. So to take such beautiful ripe fruit and turn it into wine and have that much alcohol content, you can feel it warm the entire system. So when I talk a lot about food pairings, this is a wine that actually doesn't need food. This is one that's just a beautiful, just because kind of wine. We're going to kick back and we're going to enjoy a red wine maybe on a cold evening. So I'm going to enjoy a little more of Aros's creation, and I ask that you tune in next time, because soon you'll know wine in no time.